Maryland's geography holds a bleak contrast behind its old colonial history. From the cold fog of the Appalachian Mountains in the west to the destructive erosion of the Chesapeake Bay on the eastern shore, this state is filled with the ruins of communities that lost their battle against nature and time. Coal mining towns frozen in the woods, fishing settlements submerged beneath the water, and modern factory towns dying from structural economic crisis create a clear picture of deindustrialization and demographic decline. Yes, its visual landscape presents an atmosphere of quiet social depression. To understand it better, let's take a deeper look at what these 15 ghost towns and settlements are, and how they became extinct or are now threatened with disappearing from Maryland. Hidden in a densely wooded valley in Howard County, Daniels stands as one of Maryland's most dramatic textile ghost towns. This mill town, founded in the 19th century, once thrived with hundreds of cotton workers, along with rows of housing, stores, and a church. Daniels came to an end in 1972 when massive flooding from Hurricane Agnes swept away the valley's infrastructure and forced the town to shut down completely. Daniels today feels especially heavy, with a post-apocalyptic scene in the middle of the forest. In some areas, we can still see the stone ruins of St. Stanislaus Kostka Catholic Church standing roofless like a dead skeleton. Around it, the remains of 1950s cars sit deeply rusted and partly sunken into the ground, and roots of giant trees. Yes, Daniels gives off a chilling sense of sudden destruction, showing how the force of water can erase the lifeblood of an industrial community overnight. From the river valley destruction of Daniels, out in the Chesapeake Bay in Dorchester County, there is Holland Island, which vanished in tragic fashion. Its landscape gives off an extremely bleak and eerie maritime mood on screen. What was once a dense settlement has now completely disappeared beneath the cold waters of the Chesapeake Bay. Footage captures only a lonely stretch of rocky marsh, where seabirds perch on rotting wooden stumps. This once prosperous fishing island was formerly home to hundreds of residents, dozens of large houses, and a school. But the deadly combination of severe land erosion and rising sea levels ate away at the island until its last house collapsed into the water in 2010. As you can feel, Holland Island is a monument to total extinction, offering a frightening image of how a town can be geographically erased from the face of the earth by the power of the sea. Leaving the open water behind, the journey turns north to Baltimore County, where the ghost town of Warren lies beneath Loch Raven Reservoir. Founded as a busy cotton-spinning mill town in the 19th century, Warren was completely emptied and leveled in 1922 through a local government decision that turned the fertile valley into a massive clean water reservoir. The area around Loch Raven Reservoir gives off a heavy and mystical rural aura. When morning fog drifts across the wide water, the camera captures a deceptive stillness. When the reservoir drops to its lowest level during dry periods, the outlines of old stone building foundations faintly emerge through the water. Today, Warren presents a melancholy portrait of a living space that was intentionally submerged. Next are the remains of the coal mining town of Kempton. Sitting right on the border with West Virginia, Kempton grew as a busy company mining town in the early 20th century. Once the coal beneath the ground was exhausted and mining operations shut down permanently, this remote town was quickly abandoned and left to decay under harsh weather. Kempton's physical landscape today presents a cold and silent mountain industrial Gothic scene. Among dense pine trees rise the cracked concrete structures of giant mine ventilation shafts, now covered in lichen. Rows of miners' wooden cabins stand stiffly, with blackened, rotting walls and roofs caved in under the weight of brutal winter snow. Leaving the darkness of Kempton's mines, the camera moving through the remaining parts of Frederick County captures a worn, rural-urban landscape. Yes, this is the area known as Harmony Grove. Once a small, isolated farming community along the railroad line, it slowly lost its social cohesion after modern commercial projects cut off its main access. Old sheet metal grain storage buildings stand silent, their surfaces peeling with heavy rust, beside dead railroad tracks overgrown with chest-high thorny brush. Although some modern commercial activity exists nearby, Harmony Grove's historic core gives off the gloom of a place whose former identity has died and become detached from urban development. From the rail remains of Harmony Grove, we move toward the wooded border of Carroll County to uncover Henryton's dark history. This former town presents a chilling and oppressive medical post-industrial scene when viewed closely. Behind the dark growth of wild trees, the remains of reinforced concrete foundations and cracked underground utility tunnels give off a thick, mystical aura. Few people may know that this area was once a self-contained settlement for medical workers who operated Henryton State Hospital, a tuberculosis treatment complex founded in the early 20th century. The hospital's permanent closure triggered the complete evacuation of the surrounding area, turning it into a dead zone. The heavy silence here is sharpened by the absence of human activity, leaving a disturbing portrait of a place once built as a defense against disease, now reduced to quiet ruins aging in the forest. Leaving Henryton's darkness, we make a historical leap to southern Maryland to uncover the archaeological ghost town of St. Mary's City. This place once held the grand title of Maryland's first capital in the 17th century. But when the seat of government moved to Annapolis, residents left in large numbers, causing this colonial town to vanish from the surface and remain buried underground for centuries before finally being excavated. Today, St. Mary's City presents a strange historical Gothic scene. Its landscape is dominated by quiet replicas of 17th century wooden buildings standing on muddy ground near the waters of the St. Mary's River. The silence here feels unnatural, where old wooden fence posts stand beside empty archaeological dig sites. From the historic site of St. Mary's City, we return to the Frederick County corridor and encounter the former town of Monocacy. Near the bloody battlefield of the American Civil War, this railroad station settlement slowly lost its entire population after modern logistics bypassed its local train stop. Monocacy's physical landscape presents a deeply quiet and oppressive rural Gothic scene. Explorers are met only by an old iron bridge standing rusted and silent over the river, beside a former railroad watchman's house whose door has been nailed shut from the outside. The wooden walls, faded and blistered by the sun, give off the heavy gloom of a station town counting down its final days in natural isolation. The industrial ruins of Avalon also remain as a final witness, hidden deep in the forests of Patapsco Valley. The site has been almost completely leveled into the forest floor, its area shrinking back into quiet open wilderness. In the 19th century, Avalon was an iron industry town, once loud with the operation of its forge. Its economic glory was destroyed completely after repeated flash floods from the Patapsco River swept away the factory complex and workers' housing. Modern explorers who reach this remote site are greeted by an eerie sight. Moss-covered stone foundations rising among the rushing river water. In Avalon, the silence feels heavy because human activity is gone, leaving a melancholy monument to how industrial ambition can be completely destroyed by the power of the wild. Entering the category of small towns at risk of disappearing, Smith Island probably deserves to be discussed early on. This isolated community in the Chesapeake Bay is on the verge of geographic death. Known for its traditional fishing culture that has survived for centuries, the island now faces a double existential threat. A sharp population decline caused by the outmigration of younger generations, and ongoing coastal erosion that keeps swallowing away the land year after year. Look at Smith Island today, and it presents the portrait of a worn and wounded maritime community. Anyone passing through this settlement will see rows of empty fishermen's stilt houses, their wooden posts beginning to rot from repeated tidal flooding. Crab processing sites stand silent along fragile docks, surrounded by murky bay water. Yes, Smith Island gives off a heavy atmosphere of social despair, showing the struggle of the remaining elderly residents who continue to hold on to land that is slowly being consumed by the sea. After seeing the erosion threat facing Smith Island, the town of Crisfield seems to show no less serious a decline, namely chronic economic deterioration. In the past, it carried the nickname Seafood Capital of the World because of the glory of its oyster and crab processing industry. But now, Crisfield is trapped in an aging demographic crisis and infrastructure vulnerability caused by annual tidal flooding that damages its business district. The view of its historic district reveals an aging and depressed port town. Many of the red brick commercial buildings in its downtown stand empty, with retro signs faded and blistered by salty moisture in the air. Some working-class residential areas appear neglected, with yards filled with rusty old boats. Economic decline following the drop in seafood production has created a long-term atmosphere of gloom hanging over daily life. Moving toward the steep bluffs along the Patapsco River, we arrive at Ilchester, an old mill town locked in geographic isolation. This area, once busy with workers from the Thistle Mill Cotton Factory, is now constrained by narrow road access, recurring flood threats, and abandoned manufacturing buildings damaged by past fire incidents. Ilchester today presents a bleak and worn industrial urban landscape. Massive old mill buildings stand empty along the river bluffs, with dark windows cracked and thick with dust. Cracked asphalt roads overgrown with weeds sit beside the silence of the deep valley, creating the impression of a dead town cut off from the flow of the modern outside world. From Ilchester's isolated valley, the journey leads us to Anne Arundel County to examine the social gloom of Crownsville. This small town carries a deep psychological burden as the site of the abandoned Crownsville State Hospital complex, known for its dark history of past treatment. The presence of this dead complex has directly affected the slow social growth of the surrounding area. Several corners of Crownsville give off a constant gloomy aura. On the edge of the district, the massive old psychiatric hospital complex stands solid yet silent, with iron doors tightly chained and surrounded by neglected wild grass. The town's silence feels heavy and cold, creating an eerie visual landscape. It shows how a small area can become trapped in stagnation by historical trauma frozen into its land. Far out on the eastern shore in Worcester County, we find Pocomoke City, a rural farming town suffering from chronic population decline. Cut off from western Maryland's main growth centers, the town has watched its social assets and local businesses die one by one as younger generations leave for larger cities. We can feel the image of a small town exhausted by agricultural deindustrialization. Walking through its downtown reveals a deeply melancholy scene. Rows of 19th century red brick storefronts stand empty, with bankruptcy notices posted in the windows. The lack of active economic life beyond traditional farming creates a heavy quiet, confirming the bitter reality of a town slowly declining towards social paralysis. Our journey reaches its end along the banks of the Pocomoke River, where the small town of Snow Hill faces severe demographic aging. The town presents a rural Gothic scene that is both dramatic and troubling. Rows of once grand Victorian wooden houses now stand with peeling paint and yards filled with chest-high weeds after being abandoned by their owners. Several commercial buildings downtown also sit dark and silent, staring out at sidewalks empty of human interaction, showing a small town now slowly moving toward quiet structural extinction. Yes, as an old county seat, Snow Hill was once a busy river port with a thriving trade in agricultural goods. The collapse of traditional river logistics pushed the town into severe shrinking town status.